guys are ridiculous. These guys are ridiculous.
And we are back with another episode of From the Rafters. Sam and I are here on Thursday, July 14th with Andrew Doxy of CelticsBlog, friend of the show. Third time back? I can't remember the exact time, but
Just
thank you for
second.
joining
Must be the other Andrew Doxy you had on.
us. Second. Yes. I forgot about your twin, your clone. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us, Andrew. We appreciate you taking the time.
No, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure chatting with you guys. So I'm excited to get into it, talk about games that I've definitely watched. So
Yeah, we'll start there. We want to talk about Summer League. We were talking about it before we got on, even just me and Sam before Andrew even hopped in here. And we were talking about how, like, I know I've watched like 2 of the games and half paid attention to another 2. I know, Sam, you said you've caught 2 of them, 1 of them, 3 of them. How many?
Only
have you
watched the first one.
Okay.
I work early, so I can't watch. I mean, listen. The finals, I'll move my sleep schedule around. I'll go home, work out, take a nap, and then get up and watch the game and go back to bed and split my sleep in half. But I'm not doing that to see them play Milwaukee in Vegas, right? So I haven't seen much of it. I've been paying attention. I wake up and I see what happened. But yeah, it's nice to have a little bit of a break after the season. I know we kind of all talked about that before, and I'm definitely frozen. Or no, I'm not.
no, you're good.
No, you're not
Am I
frozen. No, you're here, Sam. Don't worry. Sam might be frozen on his end, but we'll keep it rolling. How many Summer League games have you watched, Andrew? Have you caught 2 of them, 3 of them, 1 of them?
Okay.
None of them?
No. Okay, no. I'm not that bad. The Miami game, I had it on while I was building my office out. I finally got some extra manpower around here, so I tried to set up some stuff in my office. So I had that going in the background. I did watch the second half of the Matt Ryan game, the Milwaukee game.
Yep.
And then I caught the second and third quarter of the Grizzlies game today. So
okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
I don't know.
That's a good total.
Probably like 8 combined quarters, maybe. I don't know.
That's 2 games. That's 2 full games. That's close enough. No, I think I missed the first one for the most part. I was finishing up around a golf, which I'm awful at, by the way. It's not like I play like I'm terrible at golf. But I was in the cart like watching, and I got home and I was going somewhere after that. So I like haphazardly watched that one. I watched the Bucks and the Warriors ones pretty closely, but just because I had to write the recap, so I wanted to, I figured I should pay attention to those. And then the Grizzlies one I watched intermittently while I was doing other work today. So I feel like probably 8 to 10 quarters is a good round number to for me as well. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit since it is what's new, what's going on. JD Davison, 53rd pick in the draft for the Celtics this year, signed a 2-way deal, played well today, had 28 points, 10 assists. He's looked good on both ends. Mfiondu Kabengele has looked great at the center position. I think that's a guy we can definitely talk about. Juhann Begarin, who I've heard about 90 different pronunciations of his name, so we'll hope I'm saying that right, has played good too. And then obviously, like you said, Matt Ryan had that game and has been out since with an ankle injury. But we can start with Kabengele because I think that's obvious. Obviously, the biggest hole in the Celtics main roster is that backup center position, and people have brought up his name. What have you liked from him so far, and do you think he could potentially be a fit on the actual Celtics roster?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're thinking of the center position, the inclination is to think Joel Embiid, Rudy Gobert, or whoever respects him, and then some of the bigger guys. But you have to think like whoever the Celtics are trying to fill the roster with right now is not going to be playing against those guys. Most likely, they're playing against other backup bigs. So there's really not that many like dominating forces on NBA benches that would make me be like, oh, we can't play Kabengele right there. That being said, I still think the Celtics are probably going to find like a veteran via trade or I don't know, maybe late addition in the summer in free agency. But I think you could do a lot worse than having Kabengele as like your 15th man. And I think it's good to roster like 2 or 3 guys that are young, where you want to develop them. And if there are injuries, like you don't necessarily need to go sign somebody else or trade for somebody else because you have somebody there that you're somewhat invested in. So I would definitely be happy giving him the last roster spot. He's played really well.
Yeah, and he seems to fit the mold of a good backup to Robert Williams, right? He can catch the lob, he can block shots, he's a little bit athletic. So that typically is the way the Celtics like to do things in terms of their rotations. They like to just plug and play guys. We saw it a lot with Ime last year, kind of playing Grant behind Al Horford. And really avoiding, well, I guess when Rob went out, Tice was a solid backup because he is a little athletic. He does like the things Rob does, just not nearly as well.
That's a generous description for
Yeah.
Daniel.
Well, I don't know. He was
Batman.
fine. He was fine in the series against the Nets when he had to play the real minutes. He was fine.
Yeah, well, I think Batman really helped out with a
He did
lot,
too,
like
that's
true.
making it. I know Jack was gonna say yeah for that, but Tice, yeah, I mean, you're really trying to find somebody that it's like replacement level of Tice, really, because at the end of the day, like between Rob, Al, and Grant, like you really don't need another
Cornette.
person.
Let's not forget about Luke.
Sure. If you're talking about like winning a specific game, like you really just need those three. But over the course of the season, you definitely want some insurance there. So
Yeah,
especially with Al Horford, and now he's going to be 37. He just played like for like 7-8 months straight, deep into the playoffs after not playing a whole season. He's definitely going to need his fair share of rest. So that's a super important pickup that they're going to have to make before September rolls around and training camp starts.
I was listening to the Brogdon Gallinari presser, and Bobby Manning asked Brad Stevens about, what are we planning to do about the backup center position? Like, do you have any plans to replace Tice? And Brad immediately went to, we really believe in Luke. We love Luke Cornette. Like, he just started like rambling off about Luke. And I was like, I know you're saying this because he's on the team, but please fill that backup center. Because like Luke Cornette's fine. And there were those moments 2 years ago now at this point where he was like solid and he played some minutes. But realistically speaking, if you're looking for a backup center position, I agree with Sam. Like, you need someone who can replace Rob, right? You need someone who can at least replicate his production. You see it all over the roster with, Derek White being a second Marcus Smart, essentially. Malcolm Brogdon's going to be a third one of that same kind of mold of a defensive point guard who can play make and shoot a little bit. And then you have Jason and Jalen on the wing. You don't really have backups for them, which is another issue we can talk about. But Grant for Al, and then you need someone who can mimic what Rob does. And I'm not saying Kabengele is a perfect fit for that, but in terms of age, I think he's 24. Like, he can still learn and grow. And if you teach him the same way you're teaching Robert Williams and train them the same, I think they could be a decent tandem 1-2 punch. And realistically speaking, he's just gonna have to play what, 15 minutes a night, if that, right? Because you have Grant, you have Al, and Al and Rob are probably gonna switch off at the center anyway. So I wouldn't mind Kabengele. Trevion Williams is another name we could talk about too. I haven't been as impressed, I think, than what the general public has said. His passing's awesome, and I think he's definitely talented enough to earn like a two-way spot. Like, I'd give him a two-way, but in terms of give him a standard deal, he hasn't really shown me that. I don't know if, Andrew, you have a different perspective, but Trevion hasn't impressed me too much.
no, I don't think. I think his passing, like you said, stands out, but also like he hasn't really like his vision stands out, but the actual passes he's throwing, it only works if you have people that have the chemistry with you to catch those passes. So it's like, and maybe wouldn't be the case if you have a roster full of NBA talent. But another thing, when I'm thinking of that last position, like we're not really talking about Gallinari, and rightfully so because he's not a 5, but he's not a 3 either. So he's going to really take those backup 4 minutes from Al. So, and I think I'm pretty confident in saying that the Celtics believe in Grant to an extent. So I honestly could see the Celtics going small ball 5 with Grant at the 5 a lot more often than even needing to go to Kabengele or whoever, or Luke Cornette or anybody like that. I think it's more for like when Al is out, you start Grant, and then who's behind Rob, or if Rob is out, then you slide Al to the 5, and then who's behind Al at that point. So like honestly, in a given game, I don't really see the need for somebody like I'd rather take a swing on a prospect than bring in like Dwight Howard. So
yes,
there's that. But I kind of strayed from the plot a little bit because I know you asked me about Trevion Williams, but like he didn't really make me think like, wow, we got to get a roster spot for that guy. Yeah. So
that was the hope coming in. He was probably like the biggest hype train guy on Twitter. Everybody was pumped up. He can pass the ball. You mentioned Grant playing the backup center role. I feel like that's kind of dangerous for Grant because when he struggled in that sophomore season, and he was doing a lot more of that. And I felt like that was the reason he struggled. Like he put on weight and he looked slow and he couldn't jump as much. Not that he's a big jumper anyways, but you know what I mean? Like that was like his demise. So it's definitely a good idea for them to bring in some. I mean, it's going to happen. And Gallinari is a good addition because it allows you to be more flexible like that. There are absolutely going to be situations where you want Grant playing small ball 5. It's going to happen. But
I do wonder
having that
if
insurance is great.
I totally agree. I do wonder if maybe they're going galaxy brain here and they will play Gallo at the 3 and just go super big off the bench. And then
fun.
But you know, theoretically, if you have Grant stay lean and a lot lighter on his feet like he was this past season, you can have them swap who they're guarding on defense. So you can have Grant guard the wing,
True.
and then just kind of have roles reversed on offense. That might be a possibility. Maybe
Which he has
that's where
shown
they're
he can
going.
do, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, he just put the clamps on Kevin Durant. You know what I'm saying?
Hell yeah, he did. You know it. Feed my agenda. I need it. I need all the Grant love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love Grant at the center. I think what Sam said is a little bit true. Like, it's dangerous because you have him ride this line of, is he big enough? But I think he's at the point in his career where he can be both big enough and quick enough to do both. And I'm not going to start the Grant Williams as a 5 positional defender train just yet, but maybe in a few years we can get to that point. No, and Grant's good, and I think you have a good backup rotation because, like you said, I think a lot of people do forget about Gallo because he just hasn't been hyped up as much as the Brogdon acquisition, and everyone talks about, oh, you still need a backup center, which is true, but like you said, they don't really need to play too much. And then on top of that, the Celtics have 2 other roster spots open outside of that, one we're just allotting to a backup center. Like, they have 3 roster spots open and an extra 2-way spot. You have to assume one of them will go to the center. A 2-way is kind of up for grabs based on that Summer League team, but there are a few other guys on the Summer League team right now who could earn a regular roster spot. You look at Broderick Thomas, he's looked good to me. I've been impressed with him. Matt Ryan, obviously, with that performance. My hot take this summer, and I guess we can start here, is Matt Ryan deserves a standard roster spot. That's my hot take. I think it's easy to say, okay, 2-way is the very least, in my opinion. I think he's shown that. But with the way he moves off the ball, I think you're staring at another Max Strus situation right in the face. And I'm not saying Matt Ryan's going to be as good as Max Strus, and I'm not saying he's going to get the same opportunities Max Strus gets in Miami, because that's a real thing. People play better when they get the chance to thrive. You're going to see that with Neesmith in Indiana. You saw it with Garrison Matthews in Houston. You saw it with Max Strus in Miami. But you need shooters on this team. Matt Ryan, if you combine the story, the obvious hustle he plays with, and his ability to move off the ball, he'd be the best off the ball mover, if that's the phrase for it, on the Celtics immediately, right? Like, there's nobody on the Celtics who can move off the ball and get open looks like Matt Ryan does. And this obviously sounds kind of ridiculous because it's Matt Ryan that I'm talking about, but I really think he has a spot on this roster and could play some serious minutes, even over Sam Hauser, because I personally have been more impressed with Matt Ryan than Sam Hauser. That's my crazy take, I guess, for Summer League so far. But I see you squinting, Andrew, so I'll let you take the lead here.
Didn't Sam Hauser play in like 1 game?
No, he played.
Did he play in 2?
He played in a couple. He was real bad in the first game. Matt Ryan in the 2 games he played in was definitely the best guy.
Yeah,
it felt like. And I was only laughing at you, Jack, because you tied his story into a reason he might be like the best.
Well, I mean,
you're like his story, this, that.
No, I meant that for a reason.
Sam, you didn't know that we're on ESPN right now? This is just a cover up. We're talking narratives.
His story is fantastic, though.
Man was driving DoorDash.
It is.
It makes him a better dasher off the ball.
Yeah, honestly, that's not even the most impressive part of the story. Like, he used to work at a graveyard. Like, I think was it a year and a half ago? So
yeah.
Like, if I was trying to advertise my story, I'd focus on the graveyard part, not DoorDash. But
he gets the Undertaker nickname.
No, I mean, I don't disagree that in October Matt Ryan should be associated with the Celtics one way or the other, like whether that's the 2-way spot or the full contract. I think we're spending a lot of time talking about backup big, but we really need to talk about backup wings. Matt Ryan fits that bill. Like, the defensive part is what it is, but I think we need 1 backup big, and the last 2 spots should go to wings, especially after trading away Neesmith. So House is already locked up. Matt Ryan, I don't really love Justin Jackson, so I would say Broderick Thomas. I would probably want an established wing though to take up one of those 2 spots. I think so maybe you sign Thomas to another 2-way or something like that. But I think you could get Matt Ryan in there as a movement shooter that the Celtics have desperately needed, and then and hoped that Aaron Neesmith would be. and then you get another one for maybe a veteran who's been around for a couple of years, maybe hasn't played overseas last season or something like that.
Do you have anybody left on your list, Jack, of free agents? I know we didn't really get to chat much about a condensed target. By the way, Pat Connaughton is signing an extension.
Sam is so mad that Pat Connaughton's off the market. Sam
I think he's a good
wanted
fit.
Pat Connaughton.
He was a good fit. He probably wouldn't have cost you too much. He didn't cost Milwaukee that much money. Plays defense. He made every big shot in the series this year in the playoffs. Like every single time it was going in when it mattered.
Well, one thing about Milwaukee is that they love their guys, so it's really hard to.
Good for them. It's good for them. The league needs more of that. And later, I do definitely want to touch on how Adam Silver said they got to start doing something about these guys requesting trades everywhere. That was another thing I saw the same day I saw the Connaughton news. Connaughton was the bad news. The trade thing was the good news.
As far as wings on this fake list that I have, just the list in my head of names that I keep an eye on. The wings list in free agency right now is absolutely atrocious. There's like nothing out there that's great, which is unfortunate. Like I'm looking on the list, Wayne Ellington, who's going to be 35 in a sec here. Markieff Morris is the name I've seen, but he's more of a big, not really a wing. Kent Bazemore, Austin Rivers, who's more of a guard, Ben McLemore, Tony Snell, Rodney Hood. Like we're scraping the bottom of the barrel here. There's some guys
Tony Snell
abroad
who's best known for just being out there running. Like the most famous thing is the stat line where he has nothing.
I would take McLemore. He kind of fits what he's not good. I mean, well, he's not great. But he kind of fits what I meant in my mind when I was saying like having another wing that is experienced, but and it can shoot and is athletic to an extent. But then it's like cost reward. Like, would it make more sense to just stick with who you have in Broderick Thomas, who has more upside? That's a good
somebody who got a workout in Las Vegas that I just read a story on. Shabazz Muhammad is eyeing an NBA comeback. Haven't heard that name in a long time. He's 29 still. Did you know that? He's 29. Crazy.
You could have told me he's 27, and I still wouldn't really want to be attached to that.
That's fair. And then other guys overseas still. Excuse me, that are former NBA players that I recognize: Jakar Sampson, James Nunnally, Dwayne Bacon, and James Ennis. Those are the names. Yeah, exactly. It's
sounds like mid.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, let's just run it back with Thomas.
yeah. Bring Project Thomas back. Matt Reinstein. Juhann Begarin, we haven't talked about yet. I don't think he's ready to come to the NBA, but he's looked all right. Like, I think he's looked good, but he's very clearly still a raw talent, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he probably could benefit from another year, but again, it wouldn't really be like the worst thing in the world if he got the two-way spot, or if he, like you could do a lot better, but you could do a lot worse, I think, than putting faith in your guy and developing them and having them a lot closer to home to be able to put in that work versus sending international scouts and hoping eventually it'll turn into something. Or not international scouts, but international coaches and stuff like that.
Yeah. And there still is the TPE we haven't talked about either. Like, if you really wanted to spend more money,
three more days, 4 more days. What is it?
3, 4. Like it's the 18th. Yeah. I think they should spend that on a wing versus a big, in my opinion.
I agree completely. I agree.
Like, I think for the big spot, like we kind of touched on, you just need another person that is serviceable. Yeah. But you can get actual talent at the wing.
I feel like you see more big men come out of nowhere too, in terms of where they come in and how much they're able to give you. An example is like guys like Whiteside and Clint Capella, who and even Rob now, who I was tying in with those guys forever, Jack.
I remember.
And like those type of bigs just kind of ascend out of nowhere. Like Whiteside fell off a cliff, but Capella and Rob are still excellent players. And that athletic shot blocker, able to play inside type guy is just so easy. Not easy, but they tend to just come out of nowhere. So you're more liable to hit on that for nothing than a wing for nothing. Agreeing with you guys in a very long-winded way.
Yes. Yes. And there are some wings like in the range of TP, land. Duncan Robinson, I don't think is in it anymore because it's now the next league year, so he's making 18.1, so you can't get him. I'm gonna get Sam all excited here. Marcus Morris does technically fit into the TPE. which would be a very fun name. You could bring him back.
That's the guy.
That'd be
Not that they're
Tim
giving
loves-
him up because that team's trying to win now, but
he couldn't wear the same number, Sam.
no, he couldn't. That would be frustrating.
That's Sam's thing. Other guys, Kevin Huerter just got traded. That name's off the list. Malik Beasley, you could run it back, try to go get him because Utah's having what looks to be a fire sale. Past that, Derrick Rose fits into it, but again, that's a guard. You need a wing. Luke Kennard, who tries on defense a little bit, I guess. Doug McDermott. Can they get Josh Richardson back? Is that legal? I don't know if that's legal. No.
No, you have to. He has to have been traded to a third team before you can trade
It's
back from him,
unfortunate.
Oh,
or you have to wait a calendar year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That makes sense. It's unfortunate though. And after that, it's really just descends into nothingness. So I think those are your real options.
well, honestly, I don't see. I mean, I know that Brad said that they have the green light to spend, but I don't see them
Yeah.
bringing in somebody with like 17
That
million or
expensive,
something like
no.
that. Because
I
then
don't
that's like extra. I'm not a cap expert, but that's
No.
like an extra like 40 million on the payroll.
something
just
stupid,
with
yeah.
tax. So yeah.
I mean,
so
you-
I mean,
you could-
but then again, like even if you look at the bottom of that list, like, is it really that much? Is it worse or better than Juhann Begarin? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Exactly.
if you look at the lower end of like the 7 to 10 million guys, like, is it worse or better? I don't know.
Like we're talking at that point, there's really not much. Like Reggie Bullock makes over 10 million, but he's gonna start in Dallas next year, from what I'm hearing. From
in Dallas
what
is
I've read,
no
at
joke
least.
of a team.
They're a
You know,
good team.
he's not trying to hop out of there because they're not winning.
Yeah,
He's not on the Knicks
Also true.
anymore.
true. Chetty Osman, but I don't know if he'd be available. Like a lot of these
Yeah, no,
people
I'm
just
good.
aren't going to be available for trade. You know what I'm saying? So at that point,
Yeah.
sign Matt Ryan, sign Begarin, sign Broderick Thomas. And realistically speaking, we're talking about the wings. I think Brogdon, Derek White, and Grant Williams, who are all like forwards and guards, are all capable of playing the wing too. Like I think they can mix around positions to the point where they have decent wing depth without actually having any wings on the roster, which is weird. So I'm not
I mean,
too
we're talking
worried,
about-
but they definitely need veterans.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the end of the roster that, you know, on the same team that was the finals team last year was, you know, Malik Fitz, Nick Stauskas, and I don't know, the rest of the names are escaping. Juwan Morgan. And you know, at the end of the day, it's probably going to be Jabari Parker. So I don't even know why we're talking about it again.
God, I forgot about Jabari Parker.
Jabari Parker's like kind of fine though. Like
I know it's so,
Yeah. like
Yes.
for like being like the 14th guy, like that's fine. He
Yeah,
was
I'm totally
fine
fine
when he
with
was here. He was good in the Nets
Yeah, he was
series in his first season in 2021 when they were real bad. He was
Yeah,
he
I thought it
actually
was-
like shifted momentum in a playoff game.
He did. I thought it was funny that people were like so angry about him playing. Like, buddy, half of our roster is like broken beyond repair. It's
Yeah.
fine that he's getting minutes right now.
Yeah, exactly. I remember my favorite part was at the beginning of the playoff series this season. The Nets were like, "Oh, I mean, the Nets beat the Celtics last year," and everyone's like, "Jabari Parker was starting games for the Celtics last year when the Nets beat them." Like,
I was
this
guilty
is-
of that in 2019 when they matched up with Milwaukee after beating them in 7. And I was like, oh, like Celtics got Hayward and Kyrie, and Bucks are gonna beat this team, and they sure as shit they did. They beat the crap out of them.
Yeah, we were all
Oh,
guilty of that though. It seemed
Yeah,
like
it
seemed like
happens.
easy. I mean, we had just swept Indiana too. Like
They blew them out in
the vibes
game
were
1.
good.
I still can't believe they lost that series. Jack, we have had this conversation before, by the way, where I'm just like, I just can't believe like they lost to like George Hill.
It's like one of the dumbest playoff series I've
Yeah.
ever seen in my entire life.
George Hill. And then fast forward 4 years, and George Hill's the reason the Celtics beat the Bucks this year because Mike Budenholzer refused to bench him for some reason.
Now you know what
wild
is the
times.
dumbest series that we ever lost was the bubble series against Miami.
That's another one. That was horrible.
Ah,
It's really stupid.
brutal.
Man,
Very
Nick
brutal. Sam,
Nurse,
what's your take on that series?
The Miami series. Well, I say if they have Horford that year, they win. it
Yeah,
all.
sorry. You always say the same thing.
nah, even if Hayward
Sam says
Hayward
that.
was healthy that year, then you don't go 7 against Toronto and you're better rested against Miami, and Hayward is actually functional.
Yeah,
You win the
people
championship.
forget before that OG shot went in, they were steamrolling everyone. Like
Yeah.
they were sweeping Toronto, and like it was Miami next. Like okay, fine.
Yeah, that's a championship. But at least we don't have to hear the fake championship allegations.
I would hear it. I would hear it. I would hear it any day. But it is a
Yeah,
fake
no, it's
championship.
true. I would take it.
Don't get it twisted.
The Lakers championship is fake, but if we had won it, it would have been completely legitimate. So, but that's why I wanted this year so bad, because it's like there's no strings attached to this one. Even last year, you could say that was fake. I mean, it's not in my opinion, but you could make the argument, But this year is a normal year, normal 82 games. I mean, not normal because half the league had COVID in December.
Yeah, there was like
close enough.
There was an outbreak, and Joe Johnson was playing, and CJ Miles was on the Celtics.
Like, what a time! That feels like 2 years ago.
What a time!
Guys wearing numbers you never thought you would see worn.
He had like 62.
Brutal. 62. Has 62 ever been worn in the NBA? That's a great question.
I doubt
numbers by
I
Let's
bet.
see.
Yeah,
there are a lot that haven't. There are a lot that haven't been.
Some 10-day guy at some point has worn 62.
NBA jersey number database. I can find. I know there's a website for it. Excuse me, but I just don't know. When 62 this year.
Two guys.
There were no 62
guys.
this year. Were there
really? Scott Pollard with the Indiana Pacers.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
and then Bob Dilly with the Detroit Falcons in 1947.
That's all you need to know. Legends.
The second year of the league was a thing.
Amazing.
Cody Clark wore 63 for the Celtics in 2016. I don't know if you guys
there you go.
That.
Has anybody ever worn 69 for no apparent reason?
I don't think you're allowed to.
Oh no, nobody's ever worn it.
I don't think you can.
That's so funny.
Is there like a rule against that?
I don't think they let you. No, I genuinely don't think they let you.
Like there's got to be somebody immature enough to make it to the league. And
you know what? If there was anybody who would have ever worn it, it would have been J.R. Smith, and he didn't. And so I guess we're never going to see it.
I think Ron Artest tried. And they said no.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, really?
He did.
I think that's true. I think he tried, and they said you can't do that.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I love that for Ron Artest.
David Stern putting his foot down, wanting to see a Lakers finals.
The next thing I want to ask you about.
Now. Sorry, I'm like in a rabbit
hole. No, you're good.
Jersey numbers.
Do you have the site of all the numbers ever up somewhere?
It's Basketball Reference. Nobody's ever won 58 either.
Really?
Yeah, if you just Google, has anyone worn number 62 in the NBA? Like Basketball Reference is the first one, and then it has like a little ticker where you can select different jersey numbers.
Oh.
So no one's ever worn 58. No one's ever worn 69. A lot of the 70s haven't been used, so that's interesting.
Interesting.
Do with that what you will.
Thank you. Yeah,
I wonder if Luka's like the first star to have a number that high.
71, right?
I mean,
77.
77.
I mean, we can do some. I mean, Vincent Poirier wore 77. He was first. Let's be honest.
Put some respect on Ersan Ilyasova's name, all right?
Yeah.
There's disrespect. Andrea Bargnani.
Ironically enough, the first guy I thought of when we talked about the 70s was Gigi Datome.
Gigi Datome. Chris Webber wore number 84 for the Pistons in 2007. So I guess if you want to call that.
I didn't know he was on the Pistons in 2007.
I can't find any stars that wore a higher number than 77. I'm like scrolling through. 88 is somewhat common right now, but there's no like stars.
It's just
do you guys remember when Darko Milicic was on the Celtics? Because I forgot.
He was, yes.
Briefly.
George Mikan wore 99.
That's true.
That counts.
For the Lakers.
That counts. Taco Fall too. Legend. Legend Taco Fall. Pivoting. Sorry, I lost my train of focus. I did want to ask you about the Brogdon trade because obviously that's probably the biggest move the Celtics have made this offseason. Sent out Daniel Tice, Aaron Nesmith, Malik Fitz, Juwan Morgan, Nick Stauskas, and a top 12 protected 2023 first-round picks. I've memorized it by now. What do you think of the trade? I know you're a big Marcus Smart guy, and a lot of people were saying, like, trying to use the Brogdon trade as a reason why Marcus Smart is bad. We went on like a 20-minute rant about this our last episode, but we And when we went on that, we think, oh, we really need to get Andrew on here
The
soon.
NFL season hasn't kicked off yet, so they're not watching the Patriots yet, so they're still kind of paying attention.
Yeah,
This is true. So we want to know your
like,
thoughts
why
on
don't
the
they
move.
like baseball?
Literally, they need to make a choice. But thoughts on the move, and then also thoughts on not even what it means for Marcus Smart, but just all the people saying that they're right now because the Brogdon trade happened.
Yeah, first thing I want to say before I pivot is that actually Meta World Peace or Ron Artest got 96 because he was denied 69. So he was
That's
96.
amazing.
Yeah. All right. I'm done with the jersey numbers. Malcolm Brogdon. The first thing I said when the Celtics when the news of the trade happened, like literally my first tweet was like, "This is probably the best playmaker that you could acquire that wouldn't replace Marcus Smart and that would fit next time." And I think everyone from Brogdon himself to Smart in the exclusive interview with Jay King today, to Brad Stevens, like everybody has said that they can coexist, and I think that's just what it comes down to. So you talk about like the floor general stuff, it's still a bunch of garbage to me because I think that is Smart, and but now you have two of them, and I think that's really valuable because then you look at like Smart's on off, like even beyond the numbers, just like what the team looked like, and then in crunch time, a lot of times the ball would be in the hands of Tatum and Brown. And that's where we lost a lot of our poise. So I think a lot of the improvement is just going to be internal anyway. But then you talk about like replacement level, like you just up the floor of the team by adding a knockdown shooter, a guy who's not afraid to drive to the basket, a good locker room presence, and just you upped the talent level of the entire team. So that just can't be a bad thing, especially if he's not like a head case, which by all indications he's not. So so there's like no downside to this for me at all. It sucks to see Tice go though. I knew it was gonna happen, but
Brutal. Yeah.
I completely agree. There literally is no downside to this. The last time we talked about it, we were discussing, what's the worst thing that happens, and nothing. You gave up no rotational pieces except for Tice, and Tice was a guy that some people were like saying get rid of. He's not good enough. This, that, like. What's really going to happen is Neesmith is going to get playing time. He's going to play well, and people are going to get pissed. But even if Brogdon doesn't play any games for the Celtics, he just decides to hang it up, right? Which isn't going to happen. Like, you didn't lose anything. You weren't going to play Neesmith, and you're getting a guy that, like you said, is probably the next best playmaker to Marcus Smart without being a replacement to play next to him and to come off the bench. Like, that's fantastic.
It's like the anti-shooter move because you get a point guard that can actually like coexist with him, and that if you y'all knew I had as much a shooter at some point today. No, but if you keep you can play both of them together down the stretch because that was what Ime was doing because like on his own Schroeder was like the fifth best player at the time, but not the fifth best fit down the stretch of the games in the beginning of the season. So now you can take your fifth best player and actually play him with your other four best players. And then again, your crunch time lineup has a much higher ceiling, both on both ends. Because Schroeder has the reputation of like quick hands, but is not like a great defender by any means. But Brogdon is more than solid, and he doesn't disrupt their switch everything scheme or switch most things scheme, which is also another like wrinkle to the deal that I think is a fantastic thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. I agree.
And people are forgetting this team made the finals. So if you're thinking that Marcus Smart is going to get upset that Malcolm Brogdon's on the team or that Brogdon's going to be trying to like undermine Smart, these guys are all here to win. Marcus Smart just won Defensive Player of the Year. He's probably got the best individual award he's ever going to win. What else is he trying to do other than win a championship? These guys all just had it was a painful loss in the finals. Let's not act like the series was, decided before it started, whatever. Like, Jack, I say this probably every time we've done a show since the finals. They should have won. They shouldn't have kicked away Game 4, and they should have been able to win.
Yeah. My thing is,
I'm just a little disrespect there on the Marcus Smart All-Star campaign that I'm going to be launching.
Hey, I kicked it off last year, and I was
before last season on this podcast. Sam goes, "I think Marcus Smart will be an All-Star this year." Like deadpan, fully serious take. And he obviously didn't, but it was funny.
He played like a borderline All-Star, like in the second half of the season.
He did,
in the second half. You probably will never make it, but it's not gonna stop me from trying.
If the Celtics are good enough, he could make it on like a a Hawks type beat. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like those Hawks teams.
I do think
that's
the Celtics are
transfer.
going to win 60 games this year, so there is a chance there if he's
That'd be crazy.
if his counting stats are there.
Mm-hmm. My thing is doubling back on Sam, like talking about how they just made the finals. The craziest thing for the Marcus Smart hate for me is the two arguments are either Celtics need a point guard or what's the other one? It's the Celtics
Smart
need a point
can't
guard to
shoot.
win a championship or Smart can't shoot. There's stuff like this. It's or
Yeah.
Marcus Smart is not a point guard and the Celtics need a point guard. The Celtics just made the finals with Marcus Smart as a point guard. So either he's not a point guard and you don't need a point guard to win, or he is a point guard and you're wrong, right? Like they're contradicting themselves when they make these statements. And the Smart can't shoot thing, he shot 40% in the finals, right? From three. Like he shot very well.
I
in the
have
finals.
never seen people root against a guy on their own team like people root against Marcus
It's
Smart. I have a
crazy.
friend that consistently wants him to fail, and every time he plays poorly, like Game 5 against Milwaukee, which wasn't his fault. It's just at the end it was unfortunate. He had two, plays that didn't go his way. I mean, I've never seen people get excited like that. Like your team just lost a gut-wrenching game. I legitimately couldn't even sleep after. And you're excited because Marcus Smart he got blocked and stripped at the end of the game?
Yeah, it's just
what
weird.
A loser.
Very well.
I
will
that
say
does not sound like a friend.
No.
No. I will say it is very impressive that Smart. It's taken Smart like not 13, however many years to get to this point of 8 years. Sorry, I don't know why I said 13. Sorry, I'm losing my mind. 8 years to get to this point of fan base hates him. Russell Westbrook did that. He speed ran the get an entire fan base hate me.
Like he's actually bad. It's
I know.
different.
He
might not even be bad. He might just be a bad fit. Okay, that's enough.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I that's what I don't want to get too much into the Smart stuff, personally, but like I know what you mentioned of Jack of people saying Smart's not a point guard, but then they also say, why is Marcus Smart shooting? So you want to get a point guard in there so that the ball ends up in Smart's hands to shoot more. Like it just doesn't make any sense. And I honestly, that was really, I never got a chance to write about it, but that was something I did have interest in exploring as the playoffs went on, is that when the offense would stall or just look bad, like at the end of Game 7 against Miami, who was bringing the ball down and initiating the offense? It wasn't Smart. So why does he get the brunt of the blame when Tatum is taking the ball down and then the ball moves around and then it ends up in Smart's hands with 5 seconds left? Like, what's Smart supposed to do there? Like, to me, that was more of a coaching failure to not have Smart initiate so that you set up Tatum in those spots. Because in 24 seconds, the ball just wouldn't have enough time to get back to Tatum to finish the play if he was starting the play. And that's where I thought the offense really, fell apart in the finals too. So
I agree. I always say like you said, people complain when Marcus Smart shoots too much. I mean, you put him next to essentially throughout his entire career, he's been forced to play shooting guard. And then the 1 year he moves to not the shooting guard, not only do they play the best they've ever played, like with this core, but people then say he's not a point guard either. Like, sorry, let him play center. Let's start. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, it just, anyways, we don't have to continue on the Marcus Smart. I was going to say this in the middle of our conversation, but I saved it. How crazy is it that in the span of 2 years, the Celtics bench went from Grant Williams, Brad Wanamaker, and Shemi Ojeleye to Grant Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, Derek White, and Danilo Gallinari. Like, the roster construction has just gone like to the moon, like skyrocket. Credit Brad Stevens, credit Ime Udoka for the coaching, and credit Danny Ainge too. I know it's like he doesn't get credit for this team, but he drafted Grant Williams, he drafted Peyton Pritchard, like he brought in all these guys, like he drafted the majority of the current core. Like the way the Celtics have gone from we are a young team trying to get to the finals to making it to the finals for 1 year, and then immediately saying, okay, the time is now to compete, trading all their assets, putting all the chips on the table, and putting together probably one of the best benches in the league. I was reading a Bleacher Report article on what the biggest holes on every team's roster is, and the Celtics was literally nothing. Like they essentially have their ideal 10-man rotation already laid out for them. Like I just want to talk about how impressive it has been for Brad Stevens on his first year on the job, because I think he's had a fairly flawless run as GM outside of the Cantor signing. That's the one thing I'll give him a red flag for, but I think he's been pretty flawless.
Sam, I want you to. I hope you realize how Jack like shoehorned Grant in there so many times. Like the bench went from Grant and these guys to now it's Grant and these guys.
I just wanted to
Great
make sure
roster
people knew that
building.
he's still there. He's still here.
Grant was
still
leading
fun.
the
Grant
bench 2
featuring
years
some
ago,
bums.
and he's still leading the bench, but they have better players, but he's still the best one.
It's Grant and a bunch of bums to now Grant and some slightly less bums. No, I respect it. You know, you're looking at the number one Marcus Smart guy, so you know. No, I think honestly, like Brad Stevens should have gotten more Executive of the Year love last year because maybe it's like, well, it's not blind homerism because they got to 2 wins away from a championship, but like the whole playoff run, I'm thinking like it should be pretty clear. Like this is the best constructed team left in the playoffs, and the only other team was the Warriors, which their team wasn't constructed this past year. It's something that's been going on over time, and then they not tanked, but they had a bad year and got some draft compensation for it. But you know, of course, Memphis made some jumps, and you know it's whatever. But this year, like if he doesn't win the award this year, it's almost as bad as when he got snubbed for Coach of the Year, because like he took a winning roster, improved it at no cost, and on paper, I would say the Celtics have the best, if not the top 3, roster on paper in the league.
Absolutely,
you know the only 2 I would say. What happened?
They're betting favorites too right now.
Yeah. I mean, you could say that Milwaukee might have a better chance of winning the championship or whatever, but that's not a roster that they constructed this summer. It's just getting Chris Middleton back.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's total credit to Brad Stevens, who people were killing him, you know, when he got promoted, saying a whole bunch of things, but he's proven that he's earned the spot. And he was really good at his job. So,
for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. This has cost him nothing. What did they give up for any of these guys? Nothing. They gave up. They gave up Kemba for Al Horford with the 16th pick in last year's draft, which I couldn't tell you who it is. I'm sure Jack could tell me, but I don't know. And then they used a TPE to get Josh Richardson, which they turned into Derek White, and they put Langford in that deal with a pick. Like, these guys cost them nothing. Gallinari signed for free. Brogdon cost them the guys at the end of the bench that they look like they picked them off the street. Actually, no, those guys are still on the team. But Matt Ryan, Sam Hauser, Luke
you
Cornett,
flipped Schroeder for Tice.
Schroeder and Cantor for Tice. Like, it cost him nothing.
Yeah. Like,
this
we have
insane.
not downgraded any of our rotation at any point. And now we've only bolstered our rotation. So
it is amazing what Brad Stevens has gotten for fringe players on this team. Usually, every time we're hearing trade rumors, you know, like you could even say last season when the team was bad, it was like Marcus Smart for this person. Even now, Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant. This kind of thing. Like, who's like getting excited about losing a big piece on your team? I don't get it.
Well, you know, as much hate as Marcus Smart gets, I think like Jaylen is just catching strays nonstop now this whole summer, and I think it's really stupid. You know, the turnover stuff, it stinks, and it is what it is. But like, he was still hooping like the whole playoff run. It's just mind-boggling. People just are only happy when it rains.
Exactly. I'm known as, I wrote an article about, like, I think it was literally titled "Analyzing Jaylen Brown's Recent Struggles" in like November. I have like a cult following on CelticsBlog and on Twitter now that whenever I say anything about Jaylen Brown, they go, "Oh, I thought you hated him." I'm like, this is not the same thing. Like, I don't know what we're talking about.
Jack just waltzed over on this podcast like halfway through the spring and was like, I don't know, man. Jaylen Brown's not pulling his weight.
I was very mad at Jaylen Brown.
They cost him 4K, Jack.
Out on Jaylen Brown.
I wouldn't say out. I was mad. I mean, I was also the guy. I think I called Jason Tatum a flashy Marcus Morris last year. I think was what I called him, which was rude.
I deserved it. See, when Tatum gets like ridiculed and like trashed on, like he always deserves it. I feel like people don't give him enough crap. He does so many things that just make you like throw your hands up. That I don't know.
Tatum. I think I tweeted this at one point. Like, Tatum is either like the second coming of Larry Bird, or he's like Rafe LaFrance. Like, there's no in between. Like, he's either extremely good or he's like detrimentally bad. And thankfully, it's not like that frequent. I think it did happen a couple of times in this playoff run at like the worst times, but it's
In
just
the
known
finals.
between. Yeah, he was really bad at points, like
Game
actively
3
hurting the
against
team.
Miami
Like
was
sometimes when,
horrible.
yeah, I mean sometimes when Jalen is bad, like he's just there, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, but Tatum just, but he's also so good, so it's
Exactly. Anyways, I know you got to run. You got to get out of here, so we can wrap it up here. We appreciate you coming on. Again, is there any agendas that you'd like to push before you get out of here? Anything you want to say? Shout out your Twitter. Obviously, I used to read Twitters out, and then I got somebody's Twitter wrong, so I usually let people say their own now, so I don't mess it up. So
At least you
please.
didn't get Steve Pet's career wrong.
That's what Sam did. Sam was very embarrassed.
I was like, oh my God, I'm so
Anyways,
sorry.
yeah. Anything you want to say before you get on out here, Andrew?
No, I mean, just gonna start soft launching the Marcus Smart All-Star campaign over
Yep.
the summer. So watch out for that. My Twitter is just literally my name, no space here.
Yes, sir.
I hope I did that right. It looks right over
Yeah,
here.
you're good.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. So, but really, always a pleasure hanging out and talking with you guys. Thanks for inviting me. And I probably will be on Twitter a little less just because it's getting kind of stupid sometimes.
Oh,
But
yeah.
y'all seem.
What have you been doing to keep busy since the season ended?
Oh, I mean, my other thing is just anime and work and that kind of stuff. But I'm just like the conversations on here are just getting aggressively dumber. I feel like,
Oh, yeah.
and that's kind of the downside. I don't know. You guys reeled me back in. But that's kind of the downside of the Celtics getting so close and losing is that just these wild overreactions to things. And maybe even if we won, it would still be really stupid on here. But I don't know. So I'm just gonna bide my time until there's actual basketball to talk about, and obviously the Woj bombs and things that happen, but
They're fun.
yeah. But September I'll be back. I'm not going anywhere. I don't know why I'm making this more dramatic than it
Month and a half.
Yeah,
We're close.
I'll be
We'll get
talking
there.
about Donovan Mitchell in probably like 10 minutes. So who knows?
I've had enough of these guys coming to the Eastern Conference.
I knew you were going to
Yeah.
say this. I knew this was what the
enough
conversation
of
was to be.
Go to the
Anyways,
other
Gad,
conference.
thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Thank you guys all for listening, and I'll let Sam wrap it up per usual.
Yeah, thank you very much for watching or listening. If you're watching, you're probably on YouTube watching on Guy Boston or Banner Time. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, regardless of where you're at. That way you won't miss any new podcasts. Or if you're on Guy Boston, you can see us do live streams, whether it's before a game, some random one this summer. Who knows what you're going to get. Again, big thanks to Andrew for coming on. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. He's always tweeting some heat. He'll retweet Jack once in a while. Let him know about Grant Williams, right? You can follow Jack to see him tweet about Grant at Jack Simone NBA or any of his articles. You can follow at From Rafters Pod for when Jack does tweet the podcast. The podcast, not the articles. And you can follow me at Sam LaFrance NBA if you want to see me complain about guys playing in the Eastern Conference. That's our show for the day. Bye.
Check Taco. Come on.
Taco's having some fun here.
That is bogus. These guys are ridiculous.